Welcome back to the Black Sunite Buddhist Temple. It is the 7th of January. We live under a lie. And I would say a good 90%, if not more, of the people that populate this planet belong to the same religion. I don't care if you're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Zoroastrian. I don't care if you're Buddhist or Hindu, Shinto, it doesn't matter. 90% of us live and worship under the same religion. That religion is known as statism, government. The fact is, this is the great lie. This is Babylon. Or haven't you figured that out yet? See, people read the Bible or the Quran or the other holy books, and they don't understand them. You know, people say, well, the Bible is a collection of books and blah, 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 and there's prophecies and there's warnings. Okay, let's go along with that. The Bible is a warning if you know how to read it. And I'm not talking prophecy. The Bible is a warning. And the Bible shows what happens when we choose statism over God. Patriotism over God. Government over God. And we all live under this. This is Babylon. This is what we were told to come out of. See, man was meant to govern himself. And don't for 1 minute think that the religions and the government are not one and the same thing. I don't care what sect of Christianity you're in. I don't care which sect of Buddhism, which sect of Islam, what sect you're in of whatever religion you're in. They are one and the same with the fucking government. Statism. We worship our governments and we have our symbols of flags that we worship. Oh my goodness, that flag goes up. You better cross your hand over your heart and stand up. Otherwise, you're not a good American or a good Chinese or a good, whatever country you belong to. Isn't it funny how the Bible, especially Paul, but you see it all the way through the Bible. But Paul comes right out and tells you every government is of God. And you better obey them because then you're obeying God. He tells you right there who God is. So that means communism, socialism, democracy, fascism. No matter what ism it is, it's from God. And if you live under a communist government, you better fucking obey them. If you live under a capitalist democracy, you better fucking obey them. National socialism, you better obey them. Whatever government it is, you better fucking obey because then you're obeying God. Isn't that fucking amazing? Isn't it funny how they record Jesus as telling you, don't resist evil? He says that in your Bible, or at least he's made to say that. Don't resist evil. If someone slaps you on on the right cheek, turn to them the other. If someone sues you for your coat, give them your cloak also. And then all of a sudden he turns around and he tells his apostles, if you don't have a sword, sell all that you have and go buy one. And he also tells the apostles, whoever doesn't want me to reign over them, bring them before me and slay them. That's in your fucking New Testament. He's going to rule the nations with a rod of iron. Sounds like a total dictatorship to me. It's all about government. God warned man. When Israel screamed out and said, no, we want a government, we want a king like every other nation around us. God warned them. He told them, if you have a king, you're going to pay taxes. You're going to have to join the military to protect that king and his kingdom. You're going to have all these laws that you're going to have to follow. And he told, who was it, Samuel? Don't be upset. It's not you they're rejecting, it's me. When are we going to open our eyes to the fact that we live under the religion of the beast already? When are you going to open your eyes? It doesn't matter which sect you belong to. I told you that. I mean, I'm sorry. Look at African Americans. They're a good 50 to 60%, if not more, belong to the Baptist Church. The very church that was formed to prove that slavery was okay with God. And yet they belong to that church. They belong to a church that was formed to prove that they should enslave them. But they're going to bitch about slavery. Look at all the white people and every other fucking nationality that belongs to the Catholic Church. I find it funny. In the days when there were just kings, God was considered single. He was considered one. Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And then the New Testament comes out in the days of Rome. What did Rome have? They had a Caesar, which is your executive branch. They had a Senate, which is pretty much was used like a legislative branch, and they had the courts. Isn't that amazing? And yet, all of a sudden, God was a Trinity. In the Old Testament, there were just kings, and God was one. In the New Testament, under Rome, who had three branches of government, the judicial, executive, and legislative, all of a sudden, God was a Trinity. In the Old Testament, God says he never changes. He stays the same. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Yet God went from being one to being three. And isn't it funny? God appears as a man in the Old Testament. Always as a man. He eats. He laughs. He appears as a man. In fact, he calls himself the Lord. I am a man of war. The Elohim, the shining ones, can also mean judges, government officials, men who have power. And what's the first thing the Elohim do with the supposed creation story of man and woman? Do not eat from that tree, the tree that will give you knowledge, even though, of course, it has nothing to do with a tree. It's a metaphor. They wanted man and woman to be ignorant. Is that not the first thing that a government truly does, is keep people ignorant? Because knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Well, there's plenty of places to find truth. There's a book that was supposedly spiritually channeled, which should not be an amazing thing. People don't go, oh my God, that was spiritually channeled. Oh my God, that's New Age. You can't listen to that book. Well, how the fuck do you think the Bible was written? Of course, the church says, well, the Holy Spirit came upon men and inspired them to write it. Okay, so they were spiritually channeled. Same fucking thing. I'll tell you what, you want to see what is actually going on in the heavens as well as the earth? Read the Oahspe. It's a long read. But I'll tell you what, if you can actually sit down and get through it, like I have, and then you look at what's going on here on earth, you're going to look and go, oh my God, it's true. Well, I'm going to read some portions of this. Because I'll tell you what, it's true what it says. There's so much truth in that fucking book. I'm going to read a chapter known as The Voice of Man. It's kind of long, and I'll stop here and there for my commentary. Because I'll tell you what, it proves my point what's going on with government, patriotism, all this bullshit, this religion. And it is a religion. And the churches and the mosques and the synagogues and the temples, they all belong to it. Every one of them will tell you to be a good citizen. Do what your government tells you. So let's go with the voice of man from the Oahspe, shall we? And I begin. O Jehovah, what am I that I should supplicate you? Do I know my own weakness, or do I understand the way of my thoughts? You have placed before me most wonderful creations. They impress me, and my senses rise up in remembrance of the Almighty. Where have I invented one thought other than by looking upon your works? How can I do otherwise than remember my Creator? And out of your creations, O Jehovah, find rich food for meditation all the days of my life. Basically letting us know we're nothing without God. And right now, I'm not even worried about the name. And yet, though I have appropriated earth to myself, I am neither happy nor perfect. Misery, crime, and selfishness are upon my people. There it is right there. Man has taken the earth and he has appropriated it to himself. We own this fucking planet. We own this earth. We're going to do whatever we want. And yet, he asks, he says it to himself, he says it to God, I am neither happy nor perfect. Misery, crime, and selfishness are upon my people. That's all you see. That's all that has ever been on this fucking planet. Misery, crime, selfishness, greed, you name it. He continues, what is my weakness that I cannot overcome it? Or what is my strength that I give in to the desires of the earth? I build up my belief and courage in you, but before I know the way of my weakness, I stumble and fall. Am I made that I shall be forever a disappointment to myself and a censure to my own behavior? He hates himself. How many of us look at ourselves in this way? How many of us sit down and say, oh my goodness, how am I living my life? Now, verse 4. How can I say to anyone, be pure and holy, O man? Are my flesh and blood not proof that man cannot be without sin? Oh, this corruptible self, this tendency to fall from the right way. You, O my Creator, have proven to my senses every day of my life that you alone are mighty in purity and truth. That's a mouthful. How can I say to anyone, be pure and holy, when I myself can't do it? And yet we see it all the time. The churches, the religions, be pure, be holy, be this, be that, be righteous, really? And yet the very hierarchies of these religions are just as bad, if not worse, than their congregations. The very government officials who talk about having an ordered society are the ones creating the disorder. Verse 5. If only I had a starting point from which to estimate your wonderful decrees, or could find a road in which I would never stumble. But yet, O Jehovah, I will not complain because of the way of your works. You have invented a limit to my understanding by which I am reminded of you. To call upon your name, I perceive my own vanity. That were all knowledge mine, I would become less beholden to you. I mean, we've already become less beholden to God. We look and say, hey, we got government, we got the military, we got the police, we've got the educational system and the medical and the technology. We're doing just fine. We also have all the sickness and the death and the homelessness and the crime and the wars. We've got everything that is evil. We've got everything that's horrible. The religions have done nothing for this world. Why? Because they are fake. The religions of this world are nothing more than the same as our governments. They work hand in hand. Verse 6. What am I, O Jehovah, without you? Or how am I to find the glory of your creations, other than by the light of your countenance? You raised me up out of sin and darkness and clothed me in light. I perceive the smallness of myself in your great works. You have bound me to travel on earth, to sojourn with beasts and all types of creeping things, nor have you given me one attribute in which I can boast over them, except in the power of destruction. The high firmament you have placed above me, the stars, moon, and sun. I know you have been there, but I am bound down in a little corner of your works. Neither do I have power to rise up to your distant places, nor to know your extended heavens. This man who's saying this, he's humble. And yet he says it in such a beautiful way. We can't boast above the beasts. We can't boast ourselves to be above the insects, the creeping things. Excuse me. The only time we can boast above any of them is in destruction. The insects, they live in harmony with nature and the earth. The beasts of the field, live in harmony with nature and the earth. You don't see any of them destroying this earth. Only man. Only man. Verse 7. No, I do not even have power to shape my own size and stature. But all things take form and dimension, whether I will it or not. In your own way, the walls of the world are built by their magnitude. I am confounded by the majesty of your hand, appalled. Why have I vainly set myself up as the highest of your works? My failures are worse than any other living creature under the sun. I cannot build my house in perfection as the bird does. My ingenuity cannot fashion a spider's net. I cannot sail up in the air like a bird, nor live in the water like the fish, nor dwell in harmony like the bee. Half of my offspring die in infancy, and the multitude of my household are quarrelers, fighters, drunkards, and beggars. The best of my sons and daughters are less faithful than a dog. I go forth to war to slay my brother, even while your wide earth has room for all. Yes, I plague the earth with starvation, sin, and ultimately death. Oh, if only I could school myself to not boast of my greatness. Instead, I should be forever ashamed in your sight. Wow. We have room for all, yet we kill our brothers, our sisters. The best of our sons and daughters are less faithful than a dog. We haven't mastered anything on this earth except for that which is disgusting. Verse 8. But I will acknowledge my iniquities. I can hide nothing from the eye of my Creator. Hear me then, O Father. Verse 9. I took up arms against my brother. With great armies I encompassed him to despoil him. By the stroke of my sword I multiplied his widows and orphans. The cry of anguish that came out of their mouths I answered by the destruction of my brother's harvests. To my captains and generals who showed great skill in killing, I built monuments in stone and iron. Yes, I inscribed them from top to bottom with their bloody victories. And in my vanity, I called out to the young, saying, Behold the glory of these great men. To honor them, I have built these great monuments. And the youth of my household were wedded with ambition for spoil. The example of my hand made them train themselves for warfare. To my colonels and generals, I gave badges of gold. I called to the young women, saying, Come, the great honor I give you. You shall dance with the officers of death. And they fluttered up on tiptoe, elated by the honey of my words. O Jehovah, how gaping my wickedness, how utterly I have failed, except in making the flow of my brother's blood the relish of Satan. Think about it. Think about what he's saying here. It gets worse. See, it's funny. If you put on a uniform and you kill for your government, you're a hero. Whether the country you're fighting, whether they've done anything to you or not, you're a hero. But isn't it funny? If people break into your house and you kill them to protect your wife, your children, you're a defendant. You become a defendant in a court trial because you killed someone. Oh, they investigate the hell out of you. Amazing, isn't it? We take people who know how to kill and we praise them. We love them. We immortalize them. And yet the very people who hate killing are looked at as pussies. Degenerates. Cowards. Verse 16. To my destroying hosts I have given great honor and glory. In the pretense of enforcing peace, I hewed my way in flesh and blood. I made an illusion, a kingdom. I called out to my people, saying, we must have a kingdom. I showed them no reason for it, but I pressed them to take up arms and follow me for patriotism's sake. And yet, what was patriotism? Behold, I made it as something greater than you and your commandment, you shall not kill. It's very poignant how he puts this. I really believe, I mean, it hits me hard every time I read it. For the sake of patriotism, which is a form of worship to the state, we kill whoever we're told to kill. And we say we're doing it in the name of peace. I want you to think about that. See, even in the Bible, when it talks about the supposed Antichrist, it says, by peace he shall destroy many. How many times does the government say it's for peace, it's for safety, or something along those lines, and they end up destroying things? They end up killing people. All in the name of peace, all in the name of love, all in the name of democracy, or whatever ocracy or ism it is. Patriotism supersedes God's law. You know, I find it funny. There are certain sects, such as Faithists, Jehovah's Witness, and some others, who refuse, absolutely, utterly refuse to join the military. They refuse. They will not kill. And they'll tell you straight, only God can kill. Only God can take life because God's the one who gave it. And yet they're called treasonous, cowards, a cult. Maybe they are. But are they any more cultic than the Catholics or the Protestants or anyone else? The Catholics had their own army, their own navy, and they butchered everyone. They butchered Christians because, well, they weren't under the Pope Christians. The Protestants have their armies. And now look at the United States. We're supposedly a Judeo-Christian nation, which is bullshit. And we have our armies. We got to go spread democracy. We do this because we love people. As we butcher over 1 million kids in Iraq. And we're not the only ones. Every country does it. Every country fucking does it. See, the commandment, thou shalt not kill, doesn't mean shit. Verse 18. Yes, by the cunning of my words, I taught them my brother was my enemy, that to fall upon and destroy him and his people was great patriotism. And they ran at the sound of my voice for my glory and the greatness of my kingdom, and they committed great havoc. Yes, I built colleges for training my young men in warfare. I drew boundaries, making borders here and there, saying this is my kingdom and others are my enemies. I patted my young men on the head, saying, "You dogs of war, great shall be your glory." And their judgment was turned away from peace. I made them think that righteousness was to stand up for me and my country and to destroy my brother and his people. Yes, they built me forts, castles, arsenals without number. I called to my people, saying, "Come, behold the glory of my defenses, which are built for you." And they gave me money, garrisons, ships of war, torpedoes, shouting, "Hurrah for our kingdom." We have faith in these things, but not in you, our Creator. It's true. And I'm sorry. Almost every Christian out there believes in government. Almost every Jew, almost every Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and they believe in killing, not only for their religion, but killing for their government, which is another part of their religion, whether they admit to it or not. Thus I led them away from you. Their eyes I turned to look down in the way of death. By the might of my armies, I put away righteousness. Yes, I covered the earth over with drunkards, widows, and orphans. To beggary I reduced them. But I whetted their pride by saying, "Look what great standing armies we have." To the man who said, "There shall come a time of peace, when war shall be no more forever," I mocked and said, "You fool." See, those who want peace are fools. Look at our great country, the United States of America. I mean, seriously. I want you to think about something. This great peaceful nation, this great peaceful nation has done nothing, but fight wars. Let's see. Let's start with the American Revolutionary War. We got that. We have the Cherokee American Wars, Northwest Indian Wars, the Quasi War, the First Barbary War, Tecumseh's War, the War of 1812, the Creek War, the Second Barbary War, the First Seminole War, the Arikara War, the Winnebago War, the Black Hawk War, the Texas Revolution, the Second Seminole War, the Texas Comanche Wars, the Aroostook War, Mexican American War, the Cayuse War, the Apache Wars, the Navajo Wars, Bleeding Kansas, Puget Sound War, the Rogue River War, Third Seminole War, the Yakima War, the Second Opium War, Utah War, the Reform War, the Pig War, John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, the First and Second Cortina War, the Paiute War, the American Civil War, the Avapi Wars, the Dakota War, Colorado War, Snake War, Powder River War, Red Clouds War, Formosa Expedition, the Comanche Campaign, the United States Expedition to Korea. Hell, that was in 1871. The Modoc War, Red River War, sorry, my Spanish sucks. Las Suvas War, Great Sioux War of 1876, the Buffalo Hunters War, the Nez Perce War, Bannock War, the Cheyenne War. Oh, I'm still going, people. Sheep Eater Indian War, the Victorios War, the White River War, the Egyptian Expedition, which was a part of the Anglo-Egyptian War, the Crow War, the Ghost Dance War, Bering Sea anti-poaching operations, the Garza War, the Yaqui War, Second Samoan Civil War, the Spanish-American War, the Philippine-American War, Moro Rebellion, the Boxer Rebellion, Crazy Snake War, Mexican Border War, Little Race War, United States occupation of Nicaragua, the Bluff War, the United States occupation of Veracruz, United States occupation of Haiti, United States occupation of the Dominican Republic. Then comes World War I, the Russian Civil War, the Posey War, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Laotian Civil War, which was a part of the Indochina Wars and the Cold War, of course, the Lebanon Crisis, the Bay of Pigs invasion, Dominican Civil War, Korean DMZ conflict, the Cambodian Civil War, multinational intervention in Lebanon, the United States invasion of Grenada, the bombing of Libya, the Tanker War, United States invasion of Panama, the Gulf War, Iraqi no-fly zone enforcement operations, first U.S. intervention in the Somali Civil War, Bosnian War, Croatian War, intervention in Haiti, the Kosovo War, war in Afghanistan, the American intervention in Yemen, which is still going on, the Iraq War, the American intervention in the war in northwest Pakistan. You'll hear about that, but that's going on. The second U.S. intervention in the Somali Civil War, Operation Ocean Shield, which is part of the War on Terror, international intervention in Libya, Operation Observant Compass, American-led intervention in Iraq, American-led intervention in Syria. And what does this come down to? 93 wars we've been in, plus a bunch of little small conflicts. But we're a kingdom of peace. Isn't that amazing? I know the counts against me, O Father. I cannot hide my iniquity from your sight. I have said war was a necessary evil to prevent a too populous world. Ooh, population control through war. I turned my back on the wide, unsettled regions of the earth. With this falsehood in my mouth, I stood up before you. Yes, I cried out as if for the righteous, saying, I war for righteousness and for the protection of the weak. Oh, we hear that all the time. We got to go to war to defend these people who can't defend themselves. It's a necessity. We hear that all the time. I continue. In the destruction of my brothers and sisters, I stood as a murderer, pleading this excuse. Stubbornly, I persisted in not seeing justice on the other side, while I cut down those whom you had created alive. Above the works of your hand, I raised myself up as a pruning knife in your vineyard. Oh my God. He's telling you right there, religious wars. We are the pruning knife of God, and we got to go through his vineyard. Cut out those who just don't deserve to be here. Even more than this, I persuaded my sons and daughters that to have war for me was to war for our Father in heaven. By my blasphemy, I led them into ruin. And when the battle was over for a day, I cried out, behold the glory of those who were slain for the honor of their country. Thus I have added crime to crime before you, and so destroyed your beautiful creation. Truly, I have not one word in justification of my deeds before you. Oh, if only I had remained faithful with you, O God. But I invented gods to the glory of the evil one. In one place I called out to my sons and daughters, saying, be Brahmins. Brahma saves whoever professes his name. In another place I said, be Buddhists. Buddha saves whoever calls on his name. In another place I said, be Christians, for Christ saves whoever calls on his name. In another place I said, be Mohammedans. Whoever says there is only one God and Mohammed is his prophet shall have indulgence without sin. Thus I have divided the earth, O Jehovah. 4 great idolatries I have established them, and into their hands put all manner of weapons of destruction, and they have become more terrible against one another than the beasts of the forest. Oh, if only I could put away these great iniquities, which I raised up as everlasting torments to the earth. Truly, there is no salvation in any of these. And he's right. See, right now, he's using 4. Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. But see, when you read more and more into this book, you see it talks about all religion. Every religion out there, because none of them are faithful to God. They're all faithful to man, faithful to the government, faithful to the religious hierarchies. And this next verse will show that. Their people are continually destroying one another. They quarrel and kill for their respective religions, setting aside your commandment that you shall not kill. They love their own nation and hate all others. They set aside your commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. They preach and pray in sufficient truth, but not one of these people practices peace, love, virtue, in any degree equal to their understanding. The religions have not saved from sin any nation or city on the whole earth. In vain I have searched for a plan of redemption, a plan that would make the earth a paradise and the life of man a glory to you, our Creator, a joy to himself. But alas, the 2 extremes, riches and poverty, have made the prospect of a millennium a thing of mockery. For one rich man, there are 1,000 poor, and their interests ceaselessly conflict with one another. Labor cries out in pain, but capital strikes him with a heartless blow. Nation is against nation, king against king, merchant against merchant, consumer against producer, yes, man against man in all things upon the earth. Because the state is rotten, the politician feeds on it. I want you to listen to this verse. Because the state is rotten, the politician feeds on it. Because society is rotten, the lawyer and court have riches and sumptuous feasts. Because the flesh of my people is rotten, the physician finds a harvest of comfort. Listen to what's being said here. Government, which is the state, it's rotten. And the politician uses that, he feeds on it. And because society itself is rotten, we have lawyers and the courts, which become wealthy because of it. And because of this, we're dying of disease, heart attacks, all these things. Hence, our flesh is rotten, and the physician finds a harvest. They're being made rich because of all these things that are sick and rotten. Now, O Jehovah, I come to you. You hold the secret of peace, harmony, and goodwill among mortals. Give me of your light, O Father. Show me the way to proceed so that war, crime, and poverty may come to an end. Open the way of peace, love, virtue, and truth, so that your children may rejoice in their lives and glorify you and your works forever. Such is the voice of man, O Jehovah. In all the nations of the earth, this voice rises up to you. As you spoke to Zarathustra, Abraham, and Moses, leading them forth out of darkness, O speak. Man has faith in you only. You alone were sufficient for the past. Today, you alone are sufficient for your own creation. Speak. And that ends it. When are we going to wake up and see what we're doing? The Bible has been so fucking tampered with that you can't understand it. I mean, think about it. We kill, we destroy everything. And yet, what does religion teach? There's no forgiveness without blood. You have to have you have to have blood shed somewhere, either by an animal or by a man. When I see a crucifix, I see a man that was murdered, not sacrificed. He was murdered. I mean, I want you to think about that. He was murdered by who? The government and the religious authorities. Who did he hate? He hated scribes, which were the lawyers. He hated the money changers, which were the bankers. He hated the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, which were the religious leaders. And he hated the Romans, which were the government. So you have government, you have religious leaders, you have lawyers, and you have bankers. That's who you have. This is who Yeshua hated. Look at Muhammad, peace be upon him. He warned about this. Excuse me, I've had a cold, so forgive my coughing. He warned about interest. He warned about it. How the Quran literally says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you participate in interest, you are my enemy. Riba. You are his enemy. Period. I mean, what more do we need to discuss? I mean, I'm going to be showing you over the next couple of weeks how to read the Bible, how to actually get something out of it. You need to know how to read the Bible. Religion and government are one and the same, people. They literally are. They all have their rituals, they all have their saints, their martyrs. They all do. It's time we wake up. It really is. Because I'll tell you, if we don't start waking up, and I mean soon, we're going to hit a point where we can't go back anymore. And that day is coming soon. Now, I want to read one more thing. It's from the book of Judgment. And I begin in verse 1. Hear the words of your God, you who are priests and preachers and rabbis, and all you who have set yourselves up before men, professing to hold the key to salvation and the places of my resurrection in heaven. Listen to the words of your elder brother, God of these heavens and the earth. Behold, I will set you in judgment over yourselves, and the powers of Jehovah within you shall cry out for truth and justice. Take your chosen of the congregation of your church and make manifest that which you preach. Prove that you have a good and sufficient doctrine for the salvation of souls. Choose the best of your flock and show your God an example of all those who do not serve Mammon, but Jehovah. Seal up their mouths, for you shall judge them, not by words, but by what comes of the soul. See, I like this. The priests, the rabbis, the imams, the sheikhs, all these religious leaders are to choose not only themselves, but the best of their congregation. And they're supposed to manifest what they preach. Prove that they're doing this the right way. Prove that they're not serving mammon, which is materialism and money and government and all these things, but they're serving God. And it goes on to say, and you shall divide your earthly possessions with one another, being as brethren. And you shall cast it upon the altar of your church, saying, we give it to the poor. Or if you have houses, you shall say to the poor, come and dwell in our houses. Do not persuade yourselves, O men of darkness, that you are not graded by the angels above. Nor say to yourselves, Jehovah does not see or hear. Nor say, when we are dead, our souls shall turn suddenly good and ascend to the right hand of God. Nor flatter yourselves, saying, we did the best we could under the circumstances. I love that. Divide your possessions. Every one of you. Cast it upon your altar and say, we're giving it to the poor. Tell the poor, come live in my home. You don't see that shit happening. Look at these fucking evangelists making millions, if not billions. Do you think they're going to invite the poor to live on their whatever you want to call them, their mansions? Their huge religious compounds? Of course not. No religious leader from any religion has done this, and they're not going to. But I'll tell you what, they're the first ones to look at you and say, how dare you? How dare you hoard your money? How dare you not give to the poor? Let me go on. I say to you in truth, you have not fulfilled the first law, which is to make clean your own corporeal bodies, because you have stuffed yourselves with carnal food. My holy angels cannot approach you, neither can your understanding approach the place of my kingdom. How much less then have you purified your souls? As you will not put away flesh because you love flesh, even so you will not put away self-righteousness, because you shun the practice of labor, showing to the world that you love words and the renown of men and caste, making preferences in your churches. Having rich and poor in your congregation, this is itself your condemnation. You should divide your possessions with one another, putting into practice your doctrines. I like that. To have rich and poor in your congregation is a proof of what? It is itself your condemnation. Saying there should be no rich or poor. Everyone in your congregation should have everything they need. No one rich, no one poor. See, this is Essenism. See, the Essenes didn't worship statism. They didn't worship the government. They didn't worship in the temple. They left and went to the desert. That's where they went. They didn't give a shit about the religion. They didn't give a shit about the government. They went and they made the desert blue. And yet I find it funny. What did they do? Oh, that's right. None of them were rich and none of them were poor, but everyone had what they needed. They all had food. They all had clothes. They all had tools for whatever job they needed. They lived in common with each other. And they loved God more than they did anyone else. Let me continue. Which one of you has a congregation who, rich and poor, have given up all and who make themselves alike as regards wealth? Do you say my kingdom in heaven are like that? I say to you, you shall be bound in the first resurrection in Hada to all these whom you have professed to lead. Neither shall you rise in heaven until the lowest of your congregation of spirits have put away uncleanliness and selfishness, which is the first labor. And after this, they shall learn to practice fellowship and union for the resurrection of others. Do not flatter yourselves that because you wear fine cloth and you preach, that you are not responsible, nor hope that when you become spirits, you shall ascend suddenly into places of delight, because you are marked by your God. Your souls are written over, all over, with your deeds and works and words. And you shall see yourselves as in a mirror, and of your own accord shun my kingdoms of light, because you have learned words and practiced only words. Behold, I come in this day to command practice in works, not for a pittance, but for all you have. I've not come to destroy your religions. You've already done that. I come to give you a religion in which all men can be as brethren. Even the infidel shall accept the Creator in good works, for he, being the fruit of your behavior, is even in the foreground in the march of my armies. Excuse me. I'm at the end of this cold. Well, I'm going to let it there. I told you, true religion has nothing to do with any of this shit. The religion most people are in, 90% of this world, is statism. We worship the government. We worship everything the government does. We look to the government to fulfill our needs. We don't look to God, and we don't look to ourselves. We're supposed to be self-governing. We're supposed to be self-sustaining. But you know what? The government has made it to where we can't. And we have become so docile and so fucking lazy that we look and say, okay, that's fine. The government will provide what I need. So I have to give up my rights. At least I'll have safety and peace. And yet I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said it. Those who give up their freedom for security shall have neither. Start looking at the government for what it is, people. Stop participating in it. Your vote doesn't count. They know who they're electing. They know who they want. It's a show. It's an illusion. Don't think the Democrats and Republicans aren't partying together when the cameras are off. Don't think that the Chinese government and the American government aren't holding hands when the cameras are off. They don't hate each other. Communism and democracy are the same fucking thing, just a different word. Mark my words, people. If you don't wake up soon, we're going to hit a point where we can't return. We're losing our rights every day. And religion is helping with that. See these churches out there and these synagogues, all of this. These are the branches of statism. That's all they are. And as I said, in the coming weeks, I'm going to show you what the Bible says about it. It's time you start hearing what it says. So, as I said, I will end it there. And I hope you come back. I hope to see you soon.